Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics of View Through the Veil. Today we're talking to Dr. Scott Guerin. Dr. Scott, or I can just call you Scott. Is that
Sure,
good?
yeah, Scott.
Okay,
Just
great, thanks. Scott has two master's degree and a doctorate in human development with a focus on spiritual development. His journey has been a remarkable one that delves into the profound realms of human spirit. His popular Angels in Training series describes how society has begun to shift from organized religion to spirituality. Thanks so much for being on the show with me and for going through this with us. So many of us have gone through this journey from, being brought up in a religion and then
yeah.
ending up in a completely different place that we never would have foreseen. So, how did that journey go for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on, Barb. I'm really glad to be
I'm
here.
thrilled. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the more people I get, through promoting the book and talking with people, the journeys are very similar, as you mentioned, we all
Hmm.
grew up in, most people grew up in, a traditional organized religion, whatever it may be, but
Right.
it's going beyond that now. But for me, we were all raised Lutheran. My parents just said,
Hmm.
"You're going to church," and my mom's mom was Lutheran, so we're going to Lutheran church. So,
Right. Right. And I
um,
was brought up Catholic, and it was the
yeah,
same thing,
yeah.
generations of. Yeah.
And I was fascinated from early on. I just, was fascinated. I was drawn to church and I wanted to go. I felt close, to God, and I've had comfort in that. And in the Lutheran church, at when you get to be seventh and eighth grade, you go to confirmation,
Hmm.
similar to a lot of other religions. And
Catholics like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
catechism. Right.
Mm.
And so my brother, I have older brothers and sisters, and they said, okay, they have mapped out everything for me. Like, okay,
Right.
so this is what's going to go on. The first year, you go to, this is going to happen. In the second year in confirmation class, you're going to have to turn in sermon notes from the sermon, from
Mm.
the minister's sermon. So
Wow. We
that's just
didn't have to
coming.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was so, and that was the thing I loved about church the most was the sermons, like listening to them. And I
Hmm.
was in seventh grade. I was not a great student in general, but
Yeah.
I was zeroed in on Sunday mornings and listening to that. So I started a year earlier taking sermon notes, and I
Hmm.
kept them. Right. So I'm like, okay, great. Now the next year starts up again. I'm like, well, I can't use these. It's all gonna be all new sermons.
Yeah.
So I started taking notes, and like the third week in, I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds familiar. And I went back and I looked, and he repeated the sermon.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks went on another time. And then it happened a couple more times. I'm like, what? There must be some reason for this. I mean, maybe we didn't get it, and God told them, like, you must teach them again. They must learn. Or maybe there's new people. There must be some reason. And I was a kid, and the pastor was larger than life. He was,
Hmm.
he is the link to God to me.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous, and I went up to him one time when there was no one around after a service, and I said, Pastor, I noticed that you had the same sermon, last year, and a few of your sermons were repeated.
Oh, I
Like
bet he loved you.
what what what's a reason? And I'm like waiting. What is it?
Hmm.
And he put his hand on my shoulder. He looked at me and he said, "Scott, this is a tough job." And that was it. That like
Yeah.
cracked something in my
Yeah.
fiber of
Yeah.
my being cracked. Like,
Too
what? This is a
human. Too
job?
human.
Yeah. And so I'm like, where am I going to go? Where am I going to go for answers? Like that, blah, blah, blah. And so from then on, I said, all right, I guess it's on me, to
Hmm.
learn. So then our whole family kind of left the Lutheran church maybe a year or so after that
Oh,
and
really?
went,
Yeah.
yeah, my oldest brother got into a born again Christian
Hmm.
group. And then
Right.
and it was different, and it was, no robes, and, and
Hmm.
informal but real, and they had
Right.
this, and the thing that got me, and I didn't really get this until not too long ago, the I liked the idea that everything was mapped out,
Hmm.
here's sin, here's how you take care of it, and then you're
Yeah.
good. And then but in the beginning, if you remember that movement, it was the personal relationship with
Uh-huh.
Jesus. That was the thing.
Right.
And so that got me like, okay, that's what I want. I want something real,
Hmm.
tangible. And so in the groups that I was in, they wanted, in the groups, the conservative evangelical groups that I went to, they were all about a sign. Like you have to have a sign if you become a Christian, and it could be a voice, it could be some special thing, maybe you see something. It had to be not only that you said the sinner's prayer, which is a prayer, about
Hmm.
accepting Jesus and all that, and then but you had to have something else.
Yeah.
So like week after week, they would say, so, how, Scott, have you become a Christian yet? I'm like, No, I'm not. And then a few months into it, I just was feeling so bad. I wanted to be a part of them. I wanted to
Hmm.
be a part of the group, and I was
Yeah.
just up, churning in my mind, and then a kind of a peace kind of flowed over me, like
Hmm.
it just peaceful. Nothing else,
Oh,
no
yeah.
voice, no nothing. And from my mind, in my mind, I'm like, that's it. I'm going with that. I'm going with that. That's real. And I wanted it to be real. And so
Yeah.
they were like, yay, And so so that was in on it. And then, in that it certainly there are many, many, I don't want to knock that, there's many,
Hmm.
many great godly people in that belief system. But for me, they were like, okay, who, friends and family, let's pray for them so that they become a Christian. And
Yeah.
so, because why? Well, because, if you don't, you're going to be tortured day and night forever and ever. So you
Hmm.
kind of like, it's really not a choice, but you have to
Yeah.
let me know. So I was going around, I was so passionate about this. One night, me and my two buddies were in the basement messing around. I go, hey, you know what? If we all died tonight, I'd be the only one going to heaven. Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
And I thought they would be like, "Oh, wow, great, tell me more." No, they were very upset. They were both Catholic
Yeah.
upbringing, and they
Yeah.
were upset. And it took
I
a long
actually
time.
had somebody say to me, if you look over and I'm gone, that that's because I've
Oh,
been raptured,
yes, yes,
and it's
wow,
like,
yeah,
okay.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was, so I pursued that still, in delve into it because that's what I am passionate about even back then.
Hmm.
And so I went to seminary, and conservative Christian seminary, but there were nagging thoughts, about
Yeah.
that religion. Certainly the exclusivity, the conditional love that was kind of presented as unconditional love, and so I had nagging thoughts
Right.
about that, and then left and
Some
went to the,
doubts.
yeah,
Yeah.
doubts, but I pushed them away.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and one time at work, and this was a key moment for me. At one time, I was at work, my first job out of college, and I'd always try not to clobber people, but like if something came up about religion, I'd be in there like, okay.
Hmm.
And I was an expert of picking out the flaws in somebody else's religion,
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, that's you don't take care of sin there, do you?" Well, my system does, And so this one colleague of mine, and I still keep in touch with her today. I was at lunchtime, and she said, "Scott, yeah, I know you're passionate about religion, and you talk about it every now and then. So, like, why? But you see, it seems to be kind of a narrow perspective." And I'm like, well, I've checked into all other religions, and I feel this is the truth. And this is what I've been looking for.
Hmm.
And she said, I think you should keep looking. And for some reason, I guess I was ready to hear that. Like,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what? You know what? So, so I kind of moved away. I moved away from that.
Hmm.
and to Presbyterianism, because they're still a Protestant, Christian tradition, but
Right.
they're much, not a heavy hand
Hmm.
on the judgment thing. So I like that, and I flourished in that for the year over the years. I taught Sunday school for 20 years,
Wow. You
junior
went a
high.
long time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's a journey, and so
Yeah.
and I became an elder of the church. I was into it,
Wow. Yeah. But it's
however,
the church is a great community.
it
That's the
really
one
is.
thing that's such a loss. It's a
Yes.
great community. Yeah.
Yeah, and it took me a while to kind of reconnect, even with Jesus,
Hmm.
because I was like, I felt betrayed,
Right.
further down the story, and I'm going to tell you, but yeah, so I've been recently kind of reconnecting with Jesus and my
Hmm.
other spirit team, but um, in that time, I was doing, like, if somebody would come to the church and, guest speaker and do a thing on fasting, like, I'm in
Right.
fasting once a month.
Right.
I'm doing it.
Right.
I'm doing
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
that I could possibly do. But my life at that time, I was married, had 3 kids,
Hmm.
and my life was falling apart. My relationship was falling apart. There's a lot of
Right.
stressors, got divorced,
Hmm.
and early in that, maybe the first or second year, everybody was angry at everybody. And I'm not saying I was without fault. I did stupid things and anger
Right. Right.
burst,
We
and
all
it
do.
was
Yeah.
just bad.
Yeah.
And there was a time when there was something coming up. There was some legal thing coming up, and I hadn't paid my lawyer because I didn't have any money, and
Hmm.
he didn't return my calls, probably because of that. And
Right.
I'm
Good
like,
possibility.
what? Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, well, I guess, I don't know. I don't know what else to do. And then a
Hmm.
thought came to me. It was a rainy night, never forget it. Um, I just, and I had been drinking,
Hmm.
during the week. When the kids were around, I didn't, because I wanted to be functional,
Right.
and
Right.
but during the week, and then some weekends when I didn't have, just heavily drinking. And then this night, it was in the middle of the week. I just started drinking, and then this whole thing came over me, like, there's no hope here.
Oh.
And then I thought, wait a minute, I have a pretty good size life insurance policy on myself through my work. I doubled it or whatever it was, a few $100,000.
Hmm.
And I said, you know what, that could be a good way to go. I could leave my kids with some
Hmm.
money. My ex-wife already started dating someone,
Wow.
and so I said it could be it. So as always, like the way I am, I kind of think through, okay, make a plan. How are we going to do this?
Hmm.
Love
Let's go
motorcycle.
logical. Yeah.
Yeah, make a plan. That's a big part of suicidality is me. Did they make a plan? I had a plan, and I liked motorcycles. I had one, and it was a big one, and it could go, 125 miles an hour, no problem at
Wow.
all, in a matter of
Yeah.
seconds. So I'm like, this is it. It was like 2 in the morning,
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay, that's the plan. Kids are okay then. They got the money. I can't handle this anymore. It's the way out. And so I got up, and I was a little tipsy because I had a bottle plus of red wine in me, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go and do this. And I even thought about, like, do I take my helmet off, like, right
Hmm.
before, or not? And like, well, if I take my helmet off, then maybe they would say suicide, the suicide clause. There
Yeah.
might be
Yeah.
that in there, and then they would deny the claim, or I have to just chance it. On the
Hmm.
Garden State Parkway,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
I knew
New
exactly,
Jersey.
in
Yeah.
New Jersey, where we
Yeah.
both are from.
Yeah.
I knew the exact bend in the parkway where there was no guardrail and a big, like, 20-foot by 20-foot solid wall of concrete
Oh my
on a
God.
ramp. I'm like, that's it. You
Yeah.
hit that going over 100, and should do the job. And so I had a plan. All right, let's go. I had my key,
Hmm.
and I was going to go to my bike, and I'm going to the kitchen door, trying to unlock it, and it was locked. So I
Hmm.
flipped the latch, and I pulled. It was still kind of stuck, so I pulled it, and then it exploded. It exploded back into me,
Wow.
and it knocked me on the ground. And then the next thing I knew was a few hours later, the sun was up, The
Oh my
door was
God.
open, and I'm like, had a massive, massive headache.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what do I do now? Like, well, I took a
That's
handful of
amazing, though.
well, that's it. Was that divine intervention?
Yeah.
I just remember the doors exploding back into me, like,
And knocking you
and
out,
could have
basically.
been me that was I don't know what it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
but I took a handful of Advil and went to work, and then just distracted myself, in
Mhm.
work and taking care of the kids. And then over time, not too short time, maybe a month or so, I'm like, there's still got to be a connection to spirit. There's got to be. So
Right.
I said, forget religion. I'm done with that. And then that's when I started tracking through psychology. Like, what
Hmm.
about the mind? How does the mind come up with this? What about reality? How do we learn things? All that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And that propelled me through my studies, because I was like trying to not find God, but
Something, a purpose, a
find that
reason.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah.
find that connection to spirit from the psychological and scientific end. And that's what I did.
Hmm.
Every time I could, you have your stated, criteria and syllabus and content that you have to do. But if there was always like a paper, an application paper that I could do on a
Uh-huh.
certain subject, then I would do something about spirituality on that. So I kind of went through that in
Well,
my
what would you
coursework.
do on, let's say, in the psychology part? How did you bring spirituality into that? Because it is such a mental, um, controlled, step by step, but all kind of physical, mental.
Yeah,
So how did you
well,
bring spirituality into that, into
yeah,
your
well,
application paper?
it wasn't too hard, because no matter what subject, say cognitive development, like, how
Hmm.
do we understand things? Like, okay, how do we gain information? How does the brain work?
Right.
Then you start getting into the brain, into the mind, and then, Jung certainly was
Yeah.
a big part of that, was like, what is the mind? Is it part spiritual, part physical? Is it
Hmm.
neither? Is it both?
What is
And
consciousness? Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So that type of thing, learning, how do we learn? I loved
Hmm.
system theories because it taught how we learn about God. We first learn about it at home, then we expand our perimeter, then we expand on our own. So
Yeah.
there's theories all around that type of thing. How do we learn? And then so biological, I loved, because then the
Hmm.
biology you get into, okay, how about healing? Can people heal from a distance? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Can mind matter interaction? Is that
Hmm.
real? Turns out it is.
Placebo.
Well,
What's
placebo effect.
placebo? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a
Yeah.
real thing.
Hmm.
To the point that some numbers out there goes from like 10 to 20% of all medical conditions can be addressed, helped with the placebo. Even
Yeah.
some really hardcore cancers, when people are given a placebo drug or
Hmm.
placebo surgery, sometimes people, if they
Right.
wake up and they find scars, like, oh, I had the surgery,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
better. They get
Yeah.
better.
See, I'll
Um,
put it at 80% myself.
yes,
If you
yes,
can really convince me that something happened, my
right,
body will react to it. And they used to
yes.
have those studies where people believing that they were burned would actually get blisters,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
where
I
they
can
weren't
certainly
burned at
understand that.
all. Yeah,
Yeah.
but the belief,
Yes,
I
yes.
know it's
So
amazing.
yeah, so those are the types of things that I got
Hmm.
into. And then my dissertation was the effects of praying and meditation for others at a
Hmm.
distance. How does that affect quality of life? So I had people praying and
Yours or theirs?
uh,
Quality of
well,
life.
I measured both. I measured the
Uh-huh.
people, the agents, they're calling, doing the ones doing the meditating and praying are agents, and then the people receiving it are the experimental group.
Hmm.
And then I monitored both for 4 weeks. Well, at the beginning and at the end, I had to, sign. I had to work a little bit around it, because it was, I didn't want. There was, privacy concerns, but we got around that. And then yeah, and then I just, had a tested measure of quality of life and that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end result, there was no significant improvement on the agent group.
Hmm.
However, the control group, who received no meditations or prayers, had a decline in overall quality of
Wow.
life, in one area, compared to the ones. So it could be, well, was it a protective? Did it protect the people being prayed
Yeah.
for or not? The big
So it was
surprise,
inverse, really.
yes,
Yeah, which is weird, which is
it
really
was strange.
interesting. Yeah.
Um, and then
We don't expect that.
the big surprise was the agent group, the people doing
Hmm.
meditation and praying. They had significant increases in quality of life in like three or four of the measures,
Wow.
just because they were praying. And then
Yeah.
you have to explain that, or offer some suggestions and say,
Hmm.
what's the impact of altruism and praying for others, and
Yeah.
how that
Yeah.
can help you. And then maybe life's a mirror, what we
Hmm.
put out there, we get back. So
Right.
that's the type of thing I would get involved with. And I love doing
That is
that.
pretty fascinating. Yeah.
Um,
That is pretty
uh,
fascinating. How did you get to the next step, to the
Okay,
angels?
yeah, so as a result, you do a literature search for your dissertation, and it's
Hmm.
like a 2-year project where you look
Right.
into every possible aspect. One of them was meditation and the impact
Hmm.
of meditation, and there's
Right.
loads of studies showing the positive impact of meditation for yourself, for others,
Hmm.
and so that was the one thing I gravitated to. Again, the theme in my life is connecting with spirit. And
Right.
so I like that. I went into the Vipassana meditation series. I don't know if you're familiar with
No,
that.
I'm not.
It's the 10-day program that Siddhartha Gautama used to become enlightened as the Buddha. And
10 days,
supposedly,
huh?
what?
10
10,
days.
10 day, 5 days, and 5 day. 5 days you quiet your mind, and 5 days you have like the scanning, body scan process. But
Mm.
supposedly it was the same. It remained for 25 centuries, from the time that the Buddha used that to become enlightened, and they're all around the world.
Uh-huh.
Um, and the centers are all around the world. And uh, it's a 10-day thing. They design it so you are alone with your thoughts. You can't read anything. You take a vow of silence. You can't even look at people during this 10 days. And then you focus on that. So I love that
Wow.
part,
Yeah. Yeah.
quieting the mind and then hearing, kind of
Did you
feeling.
go away for that to a place or did you
Yeah.
do it at
Yeah. What
home?
mine was in Shelburne, Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And yeah, quite an experience. And they're all around. They're really, it's a worldwide organization, and it's
Yeah.
all the same. So I loved that. I loved getting into different meditation techniques and all that.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, I love this, but I would like to have something a little more specific, like a little
Yeah.
more, because I
The
think there's
mind
more.
jumped back in, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, something, I wanted a connection with a person or an
Hmm.
entity or something. And that's when
Right.
the angel thing came up. And um, the story of how I met and started working with Nicole was that I had
And
my two
Nicole
books.
is,
Oh, yeah, Nicole
yeah.
Bigley, a co-author of my book,
Hmm.
Looking for Angels. She is a psychic intuitive practitioner. She has a full-time job and
Uh-huh.
has been developing a podcast called A Psychic Story
Hmm.
for 5 years now. And so before I met her, I was at a holistic health fair, and I was selling my two books. I documented what I just said, my
Yeah. Your
story
journey. Yeah.
in two books mainly. One is it depicts all the ins and outs and what I did through the different religions and who I met and crazy stories. And
Hmm.
then the second book is 12 lessons, which are the milestone lessons that I learned that hopefully others would appreciate as well. So I was at a health fair. I had the two books. I had a poster saying, um, I'm writing a book on angels. If you have an angel story, send them in.
Yeah.
So after at the end, and I was across the aisle from a tarot card reader.
Hmm.
At the end, we talked and said hi every now and then. And at the end of the 3 day thing, I went over to her. I said, so what do you think of my booth? And she goes, well, she was very short and abrupt. She goes, well, it's kind of academic. You know, you oversell your expertise in academia, so, but you need to lighten up with this. There you talk about angels, but there's no pictures of angels, no figurines. You know, that would be good. I'm like, okay, great, thank you. And she says, oh, and you need a female voice too. That would be good. Thank you. And then she left. Like a female voice.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anyone, so I had been listening to a psychic story for a few months around this time,
Hmm.
and I knew it was a popular podcast. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll send Nicole an email saying I'm writing a book. I'm gonna do I'm gonna review the four religions
Hmm.
in the book and a chapter on psychology and then science about what they have to say about angels. And if you could do a modern day view, as a psychic and working with angels on a daily basis with your clients, that would be perfect. And I'm like, she'll never get back to me. She's probably busy. The next day she emails me back. Yes, I got to do this. And
That was
we
good. That was
now
a good
here's the
connection.
Yes, well, listen. So then she called, we have a call after that, and I go, so she says, you wouldn't believe what happened on this. I go, what do you mean? I sent you an email. She said, about right around at the same day, it seems it's tough to collect, con, to match up the exact days, but
Hmm.
around that same time that the woman said to me, you need a female voice. Nicole, was preparing for a session with clients,
Hmm.
and her angel team came through and said, you need to write about us. You need to
Yeah.
tell people about how to connect with us, who we are, so that people can understand us better and connect.
Hmm.
And she says, I'd love to, but I can't. I've got a full-time job. I've got my podcast. I got clients.
Yeah.
I'll do it, but you need to send me someone who can help me that knows the publishing business, writer, and someone to help me do this.
Right.
And that's around the same time as the tarot card reader said, you need a female voice.
Wow. That is
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how
So,
convenient. You know?
yes. Yeah, it's yeah.
Like,
And
wow, you got to work for all of us, you guys.
yes, right.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how the book got,
Now, how did
developed,
she
started.
open up your world? Because you had brought it mentally to the table.
Oh, well, you ask good
Yeah.
questions because this is, it's such an important part of my life. It's
Hmm.
like I mentioned before, I've been born to help with this, is
Hmm.
that my psychic senses were zero. Did I have a year and a half ago? I did not have I would not say I had a spirit team or a
Hmm.
connection with an angel. A year ago, I would not say I had it. I would say that I did not have a psychic bone in my body.
Right.
But
Right.
working
That
with
you were
Nicole,
aware of. Let's say that you were
yes,
aware of.
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So working with her and all the guests on the podcast every week is like a different, a medium, a fortune teller, a
Right.
Wiccan, so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm
All the
getting this.
different aspects. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that came to, the idea of a spirit team came up. Like, all right, we have a team of angels. Really? Okay. So we had one guest was talking about spirit
Hmm.
animals and how they're all around us and this and that, and they can help.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show, she says, well, all you have to do is just ask for one and you'll
Hmm.
get one. I'm like, really? Really? So I did that, earnestly. I said, please, um, provide me with a spirit animal, you know. And in
Hmm.
in a sense, is almost like maybe a little proof, like for me, like did this
Right.
happen?
Right.
So the next morning, I swear, and to this day, I woke up and there is a leopard next to me all the time, all the time. I named her Shira,
Wait a minute. What
and
do you mean a leopard?
A leopard in my mind's eye. In
Oh,
my
okay.
mind's
I'm
eye.
thinking, wait,
Sorry.
you're in Jersey.
Yeah. Great adventure.
Yeah.
So in my mind's eye, and even right here, right now, I can kind of, sometimes
Perceive them. Yeah.
I almost like reach over, but so Shira is very strong
Hmm.
spirit animal, and when I'm speaking or in situations where I'm nervous, she'll do like the figure eight, like around,
Wow. Yeah.
like kind of picking up
Now,
that.
did you have her before the woman said to you, or the person said to you, just ask? Were
No,
you
I did not.
aware?
That was
Oh,
it.
okay.
That was it.
Yeah.
And she is here all the time. So
Hmm.
that was kind of like, okay, I get this. It's odd.
Right.
I have
I'll
the,
go along.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. It's
Yeah.
good. And then the really weird thing happened. I didn't even ask for it.
Hmm.
Was growing up in my family, we had a family friend who was a teacher, and my brothers and I were into wrestling, high school wrestling.
Yeah.
And so our wrestling coach, his name is Bob Fort, and he just had a way. He was a teacher through and through and through.
Hmm.
And my dad, as great as he is and was, in a lot of different ways, Bob was
Right.
a teacher, and I
Yeah.
gravitated to him like a magnet. So I took all the courses that he taught at school,
Yeah.
photography, graphic arts, mechanical drawing, and
Hmm.
then wrestling certainly. And he would also bring us on 3 or 4 day bicycle trips, like a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to be around him, and I just loved all the way he taught, just as you
Hmm.
go through the day. Any case, he was one time, they say 10 years ago, we moved out west, and he came out, and there's a restaurant by me. And a week or so after he was there, he said, "Hey, I was out by your way about a restaurant." I'm like, "Come on, I'm only a mile away from there. You should have
Right.
called," and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And he goes, sorry, whatever. So unfortunately, he got mesothelioma, and he died in
Mm.
2015.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I was saddened by that greatly. And
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
so about, I'd say probably 9 months ago from now, this
Hmm.
year, um, I was going down the road, and I passed by that restaurant, and
Yeah.
as clear as day, just like he was sitting in the back seat and maybe leaning up,
Uh-huh.
says, "I was there. I told you about that," in
Wow.
his voice. And it
Yeah.
was like, Bob,
Yeah.
like, this is nuts. But
Yeah.
I didn't push it away. I embraced it. Like, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
How nice it
And
is, right? To hear from him
oh my
again.
God. And
Yeah.
so he is part of because his presence is there even now.
Hmm.
His presence is with me.
Yeah.
And technically, some of the things he says are what things he probably did say, like
Right.
truisms that he would teach us. But there are some things that he says that are particular to the situation I'm in. Like, I'm working with someone, and then I'd hear his voice like, wow, he's his own worst enemy, in this and that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
So you had have Bob with commentary.
yes, yes. Well, he's here. I have that connection with him.
Yeah.
So, I tell my friends and family, and they're like, "Really, Scott,
Yeah.
really?"
You're hearing
So
voices now.
unfortunately, there's I have to go beyond my family. I mean, my wife
Hmm.
is supportive because she's like, good for you, but my
Yeah.
family, like, no, and friends. I've fortunately, I have good relationships with friends I met in kindergarten like
Hmm.
60 years ago, and
Right.
most of them are engineers, and
Yeah.
they give me the side eye, like, "Okay, Sky, great,"
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so my point is, spirit team,
Hmm.
I can have that now. And then I have others, like I gravitate towards Archangel Gabriel,
Hmm.
probably because of communication, so I'm told. And then I have a vague connection with some American Indian spiritual teachers,
Hmm.
women, 3 women, I don't know their names, but they're kind of in the back on my left side.
Right.
Um, so so I have that, and I feel great about that. And I know I can ask and
Yeah. You
and
have
Jesus,
communication. Yeah.
yes. And then
Yeah.
Jesus I've been reconnecting with because I was so hurt by
Hmm.
the presentation of his message, which was incorrect. Um,
Betrayal is what it is,
yes,
by
very,
his
very good.
betrayal.
Yes,
Yeah.
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 Um, and
Gone through
so
some of these things myself.
yeah, wow,
Yeah.
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 Um, and
So,
so and then the last piece is uh I listened to Carolyn Mice, the
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Miss, I guess. For years I listened to her. And at
Mm.
the end of usually a lot of her like medical intuitive sessions, she's like,
Right.
everyone's a psychic, everyone can do this, you just need to learn it. And
Hmm.
I'm like, shut up. I can't. There's
Yeah.
no way I
Yeah.
can do that. How can I do it?
Yeah.
But I'd hear this over and over again. I'm like, all right, I'm going to double down. I'm going to take a mediumship class
Hmm.
virtually and 8-week class, 2 hours a week. And
Yeah.
this woman walked us through how to do, how to be
Gave
open,
you
how to
tools and techniques,
yes, how to
basically. Yeah.
listen. The big thing for me was listening and
Hmm.
quieting and trusting these images you get.
The
And
trust is the most important.
yes, oh,
Yeah. The
so much.
acceptance and the trust. Yeah.
And so, long story short, one of the last few sessions, she would have practice sessions.
Hmm.
She called it playing in the sandbox, where there's
Yeah.
15 of us, and she would say, just kind of turn your gaze away. It was virtual from the screen,
Hmm.
and if someone comes, forefront, just go with it. Like say,
Right.
may I give you a message? And
Hmm.
just go with what you have in your mind. You're not really sure. And so on two occasions, I was able to give that person a message and it was validated like right then, like,
Yeah.
thank you. That's exactly what I needed. This is what's going on in my life.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's it. That's where you covered my whole life from age 13 to now.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm not a practitioner, I don't,
Uh-huh.
but I know, and I can say without a doubt to people who are wondering, like, I don't feel like I can
Hmm.
do these things, or I don't feel like I have the spirit team. Absolutely, 100% you can, if
Right,
you
right.
put
If
the
you can
intention
come
there.
from that, because you were very mental, you were very in
Yes,
your head,
yes,
and if you
yes,
can come from in your head to the larger world, really. I mean, you
yeah,
still have to have some in your head, you
yeah.
have to analyze it, you have to actually have an org chart someplace.
Yeah, yeah, it has
Yeah,
to make,
yeah.
my mentor at my where I got my degree at Fielding Graduate University, Miguel Giarte. He
Hmm.
was so good. He got me 100%, but he goes, Scott, you can't just lead with this stuff.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
have one foot and at least show that you grounded in theory and what's
Right,
involved,
right.
and then you can step out there, but you got to be a little careful. And then
Hmm.
so that fit
Yeah.
me
And
exactly.
And that is you. That is you. You
Yeah,
have to have the mental as well as the spiritual. I want to back you up a little bit and
sure.
ask you about the native Indian
Oh, yeah.
guides. And I want to ask you why you have never asked them for their names, or have you
Um,
and not received?
um,
Because you
interesting.
seem like they're out there, but you've never really talked to them and
That's a
said,
great
"What is your name?"
that's a great point. I first learned about them when I had a reading, my only really reading, and the woman said, they kind of she kind of pointed them out, and it's
Hmm.
like if you see something over there like a cabinet or something, and somebody says, hey, there's a cabinet over there, and you're like, oh, there's a cabinet.
Yeah, you
It's
had
the
it
same
in your
type of thing.
side eye
Yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, they're there. And I started, and it just surprised me.
Hmm.
I know that I've been following on and off the tragedy that our country did to the American Indians. You
Hmm.
know, 200
Yeah.
years, we kicked them out to Oklahoma for their first winter ever, and
Yeah.
where they've been there for 13,000 years, that always, got to me. And I know there was some spiritual, quotes and things from Native American, spiritual leaders. But yeah, so that's a great point. I mean, maybe I
Yeah.
should do
I would
that.
definitely ask them.
Um,
They might just be waiting to be asked, to be
yeah,
invited into the conversation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Thank you for
tell
that.
me about angels.
Okay.
All the different angels and who you gravitate toward and how you came to angels.
Yes. So in the book, starting out, kind of like, like I do,
Mm-hmm.
you start out in academia, you always say like, where do we start on angels? So that's when and I knew some of the story through and information through just my growing up in the Christian church. But so I wanted to kind of map out like, okay, what does the Bible say about angels and the Hebrew Bible and then in Islam? And
Right.
then Hinduism and Buddhism. What are those takes on angels? And they're all different flavors. And I say um, Islam and Judaism and Christianity have a lot of overlap because
Mm-hmm.
they use a lot of the same texts and identify archangels and guardian angels and
So
things like
all
that.
religions, though, have angels. They all do.
Yes, well, I point out like Hinduism have angel-like being,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily angels as in the Islamic and Judeo and Christian text, but they have angel-like beings, and certainly
Mm-hmm.
they are gods, many, many gods
Yeah.
and deities within Hinduism, but they do have that. And then and even in Buddhism, you have there's no, Buddhism like, well, you have the old air quote reality thing going on,
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, I thought I was real. But when you walk through that, the closest thing to an angel in Buddhism is the bodhisattva, which is the person who is going through their lifetimes, um, attempting to be enlightened, but they put their own path, they put their own journey aside to help others.
Hmm.
And so that's the closest thing to angels
Right.
in Buddhism. But
So in other religions, there are helpers more than what we call angels.
yeah,
We
so there
Christians call angels.
yeah, so there's
Yeah.
levels of angels, and
Hmm.
in Christianity, and in the Jewish culture, you have a lot of detail about them.
Hmm.
Um, First of all, a big misnomer is that angels are separate species than humans and
Hmm.
humanoids. Um, they were created, as the world was being created by God, source, all
Yeah.
that is. The physical universe was created, and right around that time, angels were created. The angelic realm is a separate group of beings
Hmm.
that never have been incarnated, and are here to help us and help, work out and roll out love and
Right.
peace and joy of the universe. So within that realm, you have different not levels, because they don't like to think of themselves as higher or lower, that type of thing. But there are levels. Archangels is the kind of the top level, the most influential, powerful.
Hmm.
The sacred text only has one named angel, Archangel Michael.
Yeah.
He was the one that threw out Archangel Lucifer, in that big
Hmm.
war. But there are other angels in not only the accepted scriptures, but apocryphal scriptures, and modern day angels and mediums will say there's lots of archangels. And yes,
Yeah.
so that's kind of it. And then there's other angel variations, which are like cherubim and seraphim,
Hmm.
are angels, but
You're
uh,
talking Catholic now.
yeah. Well,
You
it's
know,
it's it's in the
is it all
Hebrew.
through
It's
Christianity?
yeah, it's all yeah
Yeah.
in the Old Testament, which is accepted by Islam as well, some parts of it.
Right.
Yeah, all that, so
Mm-hmm.
there are parts that go beyond Catholicism, certainly, Christian, Protestant, and Islamic. But so you have other types of angels, and then angels in different categories like choirs and principalities and thrones. Those are all groups of angels. And then I'd say the more common, I hate to say regular angels, but that word means messenger, in all
Mm-hmm.
religions. And
Right.
so those are the types of angels that are messengers.
Yeah.
Um, the common denominator across of the levels of angels is the guardian angel,
Mm-hmm.
and that's more what I've learned over the past year is as we come into this life, we contract
Mm-hmm.
with an angel with or angels that okay, this is Barb, she's going to do this, and
Yeah.
Barb, meet your angel, okay, great. And then we come down here on this side of we forget everything on this side of the
Uh-huh.
veil,
Yeah.
and they can intervene in our lives without our permission. So a
Oh, wow.
proverbial
Yeah.
car accident that is averted, this or
Mm-hmm.
that, they can intervene. Every other angelic being has to be we have to they have to wait to be asked to intervene.
Wow. Yeah.
It's that free
Uh-huh.
will, and it's a major deal, the free will,
Yeah.
not only to protect us, but also to help us walk through our own journey and say, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I need this now. And so that is one big difference that I've learned about. And it underscores the importance of asking
Right.
and putting intentions out.
Can I
Um,
ask this real quick?
sure. Yeah, sure.
Can my guardian angel ask for those other angels, or does it
Ooh.
have to be me? Is my
Interesting
guardian angel
question.
smarter?
I know that's a fascinating question. I don't know. My gut reaction is that you would have to ask, but I'm not
So I
sure.
would have to not
I
leave
That
it
would
to
be
my
my
guardian
yeah.
angel.
I'll
Yeah.
have to ask some of my colleagues and friends who are into this.
Hmm.
But yeah, so
You
that's
need to
the
do
idea.
some research, huh?
Yes, continue. It's always a
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so that's kind of the map out of what
Hmm.
I've learned. And in our book, so I go through the religion, psychology, science, and then the second half is how to connect, how to open up your psychic senses, how to contact with specific beings, how to contact with your spirit team. There's
Hmm.
meditations, there's exercises to do to open up, and that is my main lesson or my main message with this book is that wherever you are in your understanding and interaction with the
Right.
angels, you can learn how to do that. And there are many other resources out there. I mean, our book isn't the only thing out, but
Hmm.
it's a great guide to wherever you are to go to do that. Um, and you can, just me within a year or so, I mean, my life is turned upside down
Hmm.
in terms of my understanding, um, and understanding and feeling the support we have as part of our spirit team.
Right. Now, who's on your team?
So I have Shira, my leopard, and Bob,
Hmm.
Guardian, and then uh,
Is Shira
Gabrielle.
the name of the leopard or the
Yeah,
name
I
of?
named her.
Okay.
I named her. I don't
Yeah.
know if I
Yeah.
was allowed
It
to,
just
but I
came
did.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Am I allowed? I don't know. And then Jesus, I've been intentionally, and this is only in the last few months,
Hmm.
um, that I've been intentionally going back to all the verses in the Proverbs that I studied for many years,
Right.
re looking at that in a new light with Jesus
Hmm.
as a part of my team, and
Yeah.
then archangels, and then the American Indian um, uh, and
Hmm.
people,
Right.
um, and then and I've been recently, my involvement with my team has it showed itself in uh, healing, healing things in my life. And the way it kind of goes, I know it's another, maybe for another time, but what I'll do is I'll have vivid dreams about a very hurtful time in my life.
Hmm.
And not, it's like transported back where I can see, hear, feel, smell the
That
whole
different
thing.
look of a dream where it's
Yes,
very vibrant, it's very
yes,
specific. Yeah.
yeah.
That's almost
And
like a visitation rather than a dream.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, in those dreams, is an entity, a blurry type of figure
Hmm.
looking over in the upper left
Yeah.
and kind of taking me there. And then there's a resolution of that hurtful time.
Hmm.
And then it happened a few different
Oh,
times,
that's
and
nice
it
that
just
that's
happened.
happening. Yeah.
Yes, and then just last week it was a big one.
Hmm.
Very, very dark time that they took me through. And then there was a resolution where, like, wow, I got through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So who do you think is orchestrating that? Is it your guardian angel or
It could be my higher self, that's a
right?
part of the team too, I guess. It's a group effort.
It's a group thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
group effort all about me.
Oh
As
yeah.
much, but
You are the point person in this group.
I guess I joke,
Yeah.
but I think it's a team effort, and part of that
Hmm.
is my higher self,
Right.
some level, 3 level, 4 levels up, that
Right.
can see myself in past,
See
present,
the
future,
overall. Yeah.
set up, what I'm going to learn, in each lifetime,
Hmm.
in my path. There's some definitely coordination of a journey back to full understanding of who I am, a
Yeah.
part of God. It's the journey is the lesson.
Hmm. Do you ever call in like Archangel Michael or Gabriel or,
Oh yeah,
do
yeah.
you?
Especially when I'm writing Archangel Michael, I just ask, uh, and some people say ask, but you can also just say thank
Hmm.
you, Archangel
Right.
Michael, for helping me with this today, or
Assume that they're helping
yeah,
rather
and
than
that they,
ask. Yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, specifically do that, please help me in
Hmm.
times when I don't understand, or if I'm nervous, or
Right.
that
Right.
type of
Be
thing.
here with
So,
me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, huge, huge part of my
How
life.
about some of the lesser, well, I call them lesser angels because we're
Mhm.
so familiar with Michael and Gabriel. Now, do you ever pull in Gabriel? Um,
Um, well, yeah, for writing,
mhm,
Archangel Gabriel.
right.
And now
I feel like
that's,
those are the big two.
yeah. Now, when I talk with other mediums,
Hmm.
the ones that have been doing this for many years, and you probably will feel this too, that you gain an alignment with another angel or deity,
Yeah.
and and then from what I understand, characteristics about them will kind of come to mind, like I was just looking up before, like Archangel Raphael. In our
Hmm.
book, we say they in general, Raphael helps with guidance and support, healing, psychic abilities. And then we have that items that are attributed to Raphael, like their color or aura is emerald green.
Hmm.
The element is air, and the crystals are emerald, jade, malachite. And so,
Right.
for people who, for some reason, want to zero in on that, you can get a rose quartz or jade stone, crystal,
Hmm.
and meditate on that. Um, just the other night, in the middle of the night, my eyes were closed and I was kind of up, but I got this very sense of blue, like a
Yeah.
blue form was in front of my eyes, and and that's always associated with Archangel Michael.
Hmm.
So I guess when you get more sophisticated, I guess, as
Yeah.
a
More
medium
attuned.
in
Yeah.
helping with that,
Yeah.
you know who to call on for maybe different things.
Yeah.
Um,
There
And
is
then
a whole lot hierarchy, it seems like, with
yes,
the angels.
and
Yeah.
in a sense specialty, but at the
Mhm.
same time, if you ask people, professional mediums, I call them,
Yeah.
they'll say like, the angels, they really don't care about names. It's
Yeah.
more for
Yeah.
us that there's names.
That we need
Um,
names. Yeah.
yeah, that we
Yeah.
want to put it. But
Right.
so, and that, I think that that's an important thing, again, to ask for a particular thing that's going on in your life. And then, if you happen to get a sense of an identity,
Hmm.
then that's, I guess it's even better,
Right.
to know, that, oh, that was Archangel Michael, you know.
We're coming to the end of our
Mhm.
time. And our
Yeah.
time, it sounds like I'm going to die.
Oh
I didn't
no,
mean
no,
that, the
no.
show. um, but I want everybody to know where they can get your book and they can get hold of you
Sure.
and, what you have coming up.
Yeah, so the book, you can get the book on Amazon in all four formats, paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. A lot of people, the audiobook has been selling really well because of the
Yeah.
meditations that Nicole reads in there.
Hmm.
There is a website for the book called lookingforangelsbook.com
Uh-huh.
that tells a little bit more about the development of the book. And then also we have signed copies and a kind
Yeah.
of a cool gift box there.
Yeah.
Um,
Great.
my personal site is angelintraining.org.
Hmm.
And on that site, I have the books available certainly through there. But I'm just starting out, and I don't know, Barb, I'm just kind of putting it out there, a
Yeah.
spiritual coaching offering
Hmm.
to maybe people who wants, kind of where I was and kind of looking for options. I have that out.
Like a
I'm going to
mentorship.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so I can help both on the psychological side. I'll probably get some psychic hits along the way, but
Hmm.
so I have that out there, and that's available. And then a lot of the podcasts that I've been doing,
Yeah.
episodes are on there as well. And then you can contact me
Yeah.
through that
Through the
site. So
website.
yes, there'll be
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
contact button.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on. And
Yes, well, thank you,
I'm
Barbara.
actually going to close the show and then I'm going to ask you another question. We're going to keep going a little bit
Okay,
if you're okay.
sure,
So I'm
sure.
going to close the show here and thanks everybody for listening to this. On the live spot, it'll end here, but on demand and on every podcast, we can keep going. So for those live listeners, thanks so much. For those on demand listeners, my next question is, where did the saints come into all of this?
Hmm.
Like,
Interesting.
I have Saint Anthony who finds everything I need to find.
Yeah. So,
And that he goes across religions, it seems like, because other people in other religions tell me, oh yeah, they
yeah.
they use the Tony look around, something needs to be found.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, the saints, by definition, the Catholic religion has defined characteristics of,
Hmm.
criteria for a saint. I think definitely a
Right.
miracle is definitely one of them. I forget
Yeah.
the other ones, devoted to God and that type of
Yeah,
thing.
I'm not sure.
So, and
Yeah.
then they're voted on, I guess, to some
Hmm.
extent, whether they're a saint.
And some of them
Um,
get voted out.
yes, yeah, I
I
heard
know.
about that
Yeah.
not too long
St.
ago.
Christopher got
Mm.
voted out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So so definitely these are elevated or matured
Hmm.
beings that started out as humans in outside of religious context. The word I've heard is ascended masters, and
Hmm.
that's how we
You
label
think
them in
they're in
our
that
book.
group? Yeah.
Yes, that
Yeah.
say Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene,
Hmm.
um, and others who
Yeah.
certainly could be saints. Depending, it's more of a religious term, I guess, is what I'm
Right.
saying, more a specific Catholic term. But the what they do and how they fit into the whole scheme of things is found outside of religion. That they are certainly elevated leaders,
Hmm.
because like I mentioned, angels have never been incarnate, so
Right.
these are people who have elevated themselves to a spiritual leadership.
Hmm.
Um, position and can help again,
The
just like I
saints or
mentioned,
the angels have
uh,
elevated themselves to spiritual.
the saints,
The
the
saints. Okay.
saints are,
Yeah.
are special. They obviously are were humans,
Mm-hmm.
growing through humanity, but
Right.
elevated in through their works, through, I don't know all the particulars, but they have a seat of spiritual leadership in individuals' lives,
Yeah.
like that.
Do other
And
religions have saints? Because I don't know.
not that I have ever heard about,
Oh, okay. So they're
but what
particular to the Catholic or to the Christian?
Yes, but at the same time, there are elevated people. They don't
Hmm.
have, they call them, the next
Ascended
name,
masters.
ascended masters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a
Yeah.
sense, they are there. It's just that what you call them and is there criteria, ascribed to them that the Catholics do. But
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, I would put them all in the category of, it's okay to call on them,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether you call them a saint or, or ascended master or, whatever it
Hmm.
may be.
And then how about like the group so that at the end of the world, again, I'm back in the Christian, the Catholic
Mm,
thing, is all the angels will come from the heavens,
mm,
at the rapture kind of thing,
hmm.
or at the end of the world.
Yeah.
And this is a group really that not, I mean, they're individual, but they're not.
Mm.
That's kind of the way I take it.
Yeah, I just listened to a kind of a presentation on the Book of Revelation and end
Hmm.
times and how that ties into the geopolitical history of the East and all this. And I'm
No,
like,
that's fascinating.
it
Yeah.
was, and there was
Yeah.
a quite a bit of structure to it that I hadn't really heard about. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm like, well, that's like history. Like, I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by American history, but okay, what about now? And what
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
yeah, what does that mean to me? But it's tough to say that what's laid out in the sacred text is what is going to be
Hmm.
um, actually happen.
Right.
Was it written in certain ways that we could understand, now or back, 2000 years ago? And
Yeah. Where they
what
were
does that
coming
really
from, you
look
mean?
like? Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it
Yeah.
change? Just like, um, free will comes into play. I mean, is it set in stone, what's
Hmm.
written in as far as future times? Yeah, there's so many variations on that theme,
Yeah.
um, that it's tough to say. So I kind of look at the here and now. Um,
Hmm.
and lately, I zero in on the spiritual dimensions,
Right.
as a structure of us. We never die. No one dies. We
Hmm.
just we just move into another spiritual dimension. Most people
Right.
say fourth or fifth and beyond,
Hmm.
and then we kind of map out that. But as far as warfare and who's going to win and all that
Right.
stuff,
Right. Yeah.
um, I think the one thing that I know for sure is that that love, that the positive energy is the only real energy in the universe, and that
Mhm.
ultimately, no matter what we see going on around us, it's going to naturally apply to that and move us all
Right.
eventually into a spirit of oneness,
And
where
do
we
you
all
think
came
they're
from.
frequencies, they're vibrational frequencies
Oh yeah, I mean that's
that
all there
were,
is in my
yeah, that
mind.
were on different levels? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we, most of the modern day sources, certainly not in the religious text, but modern day sources will say that there's a map of spiritual dimensions. They all agree on a third dimension, which is physical, and
Right.
then a fourth dimension, which is um, spiritual, more spiritual,
Hmm.
uh, not time bound, not physically bound, and angels live there and kind of dip in. In a sense, we have a
Yeah.
veil. You could say
Yeah.
there's a veil, and the
Hmm.
past loved ones and angels
Right.
can dip into the third dimension and
Yeah.
appear and work and this and that.
We
Um,
can't dip into the fourth while here.
yeah, although some people would say that we dance a little bit in the fourth dimension,
Yeah.
people, and that's
Yeah.
where psychic
That's a nice
senses
way
come
to
in.
say it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's where we can pick up our psychic senses is when we shift our vibrations up
Hmm.
and start tapping into that. But for the
Right.
most part, we're here in the physical world.
Yeah. Do angels have free will? That's always been a
Oh
big
boy.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big, controversial.
Right.
One Islamic theologian said, and I have it in the book, he said angels are like the robots on a Toyota car manufacturing conveyor belt.
Yeah.
They're just do this task. They don't
Hmm.
have a choice. And that goes along with Islam's view of angels, where it's part of their five pillars of faith that
Hmm.
a Muslim believes in angels. However, the huge difference is you don't pray to an angel or
Yeah.
ask. You ask Allah everything. And then if Allah deems necessary, then he'll send angels.
Yeah.
Um, and then others will say they have free will. But it's tough to say.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to help him. you know, kind
Yeah, really. I don't
he's
like
on his
him.
own. I don't, yeah, I used to like him, but now
Yeah.
I kind of don't think so. But
Yeah.
so it's a tough one. And if you're aligned with the heart and soul and vibration of the universe and all that is and God and source,
Hmm.
if you're aligned with that, how can you not be? How can you have your own, like, you know what I mean? It's like if you're
Right.
so wired in to that,
Hmm.
um,
How
it'd
could
be tough.
God not allow them to have choice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And
And how
then,
could,
consider it a devotion, That's what
yeah,
I always think. How can you have a devotion if they have no choice of it?
right,
That they're
right.
devoted to
Yes.
God,
Yeah. It's that
that's
whole philosophical thing.
yeah,
Like,
it's like
how,
cheating basically.
yeah. Yeah.
I know.
So
So,
yeah, a lot of nice to know things. I mean, and to me, all this stuff doesn't matter, like,
yeah,
because we get psychics in and they're like, whoa, they can do this and they can do that. And
right, right.
famous psychics on TV.
Hmm.
And to me, it does none of that matters. Like, I don't even care. Like, if someone says, oh, I can tell you, what you're going to be doing in a year. Like,
Yeah,
I don't care. I'm not impressed that you
right.
can know that. Because that First Corinthians verse, it says, and I have it on my desk here, if I have the gift of prophecy, can predict the future and move mountains. If I
Mm.
have that ability and don't have love, I have nothing,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I think that's the big takeaway from all of this is, like, it's
Hmm.
fascinating. We can get help. But at the very end, I'll take a kind, loving, godly person with zero psychic abilities or in
Right,
contact with anybody over somebody who can tell me, what my new book is going to be about or something like that.
right, right.
Yeah.
But don't you find that some people don't believe, well, you've gone through most of your life not believing you're psychic in any
Yes,
way, but don't you
absolutely.
think there's still that the spiritual, energetic vibration that is coming through them, whether
Mm.
they're aware of it or not, they're kind of dipping into it, but without
Mm.
knowledge of it?
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, I don't know anything about this. How do I start? And I
Yeah,
say, well, start by just noticing what's
right.
going on around
Yeah.
and you'll see things, you'll see repeated numbers, you'll have
Hmm.
dreams, and you've probably been interacting with angels and the spirit team your whole life. You just
Yeah.
disregarded it, like,
Yeah.
oh, I was supposed to go this way. I had a hunch I went that way. Like, you
Hmm.
know, um,
Right.
so
I
it's
think a
it's an
lot of that goes
awareness.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, or
And
people
what
just
about
have it.
those signs? What about
Oh,
the
yeah.
signs? Yeah.
Um, so we did a survey for right in the beginning of the book. I did a survey,
Hmm.
800 participants. And the first question was, do you believe in angels?
Yeah.
75% said yes, which
Uh-huh.
is about the numbers in the US. People believe in
Right.
angels.
Now, do the other 25% believe in something else that's not called angels, or they just
Um,
don't believe in anything?
well, we didn't ask
Didn't
that,
ask that
on the
question. Huh?
survey.
Yeah.
But we did say, of you who do believe in angels, how many have you had an angelic experience?
Hmm.
And about 200 out of that 600, like, 214 said yes. And then
Right.
we gave them a list of 12 items, like what out of these did you hear or did you
Mhm.
see? And then other, and other.
Well,
And
what's an example of those
okay,
12?
so what happened is that out of that 200, it generated over 700 responses because people could pick multiple things.
Right.
And the top one was having a dream that is unlike any other dream.
Yeah. That
Um,
like we talked about.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the second one was hearing your name called or suddenly getting an urge to
Mhm.
stop to go in a different direction, something like innate, like,
Right.
tugging at you.
Yeah.
And then the third and fourth and fifth were like repeating numbers,
Hmm.
seeing, and then hearing a song on the
Yeah.
radio that really sticks out, or insect or butterfly,
Hmm.
animal that happens like, why is that butterfly hanging, seems to be hanging around me today,
Right. Right. The
so
bird in my
those,
house when
yeah.
someone has died. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So those I say to my friends who are just into this, I go, that's been spirit, around you your whole life. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so take a look at that and
Do
pay
you think
attention.
people who do pay attention see more? Not see more, but get more signs
Yeah. And then some people could argue that would be what's
that
the term?
recognize it more, so
Yeah, the
they
more that you
kind of
see
bring it
it,
on. Yeah.
yeah, reinforcing perception bias is the 50 Cent
Yeah,
word,
is
where
that what it's
like,
called?
oh,
Yeah.
butterflies, oh, I should look for butterflies, and then they see them,
Right. Right.
but it's more than that. It's more than just, a filter in your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's and then certainly if you ask to, show me a sign.
Right.
Um, and that comes through quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
In stories that I've heard, and even in my own life, show me a sign, that lets me know I'm on the right path.
Right. Let me know you're here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And how about oh God, it went right out of my head. Awe. That's what it is. The you know how like those moments where you go out or something, you're in the middle of your day and all of a
Mm,
sudden there's a sunrise or sunset, whatever, but it
mm,
knocks you backwards in the beauty of it, in
mm.
awe.
Yeah,
And it's a moment where you're actually taken out of your life
yeah,
that's you back and makes you, your
yeah.
picture in a way would instill awe, your picture behind you.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all, in one sense, all this is about vibrational levels
Hmm.
and getting yourself open and moving upward. That's when
Right.
you start seeing that connection. Some of the most, we have 17 angel stories in our book that we
Hmm.
got from listeners from the podcast sent in.
Yeah.
And a few of them are just nothing definitive. The person hears something, they go down and they see a glowing whitish blue light,
Hmm.
and then for like 15 seconds,
Yeah.
they're experiencing unconditional, pure love from God, and it
Yeah.
changes their life that 15 seconds. And
Yeah.
so I think there's glimpses of that along the
Mm.
way if we
Right.
stop and
It's
soak it
almost
in.
like a little sound has gotten through, a little look has
Yeah.
gotten through.
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
glimpse, a little
Right.
flash of light
And
to remind
science is
us.
saying that awe at this point kind of almost resets your brain in a way, opens
Hmm.
up your brain. There's a lot of scientific uh,
Yeah, I could see that.
evidence now, yeah,
Yeah.
saying that that moment of awe really does something physically as well. It
Hmm.
opens you up to a different place that
When
stays with you. It actually stays.
some of people I've met over the years, they had an experience in
Hmm.
their life, and they felt the experience as an electric
Yeah.
shock, not shock, yeah, shock, I
Hmm.
guess, but mild. And it was kind of perpetuating. And then after that, their psychic abilities exploded.
A
And
lot of
and I
people
wonder,
that calls that Kundalini rising.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Kundalini.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that. And I
Yeah.
wonder if that's like a reworking of our brain or neural
Our
connections to a
electrical
new
system.
level.
Yeah.
Our electrical system
Yeah.
upgrade. We get
Right.
an upgrade.
Or blowing the circuits. That's
Yes.
the other side.
Yes.
Oh, we just blew
Yes.
some circuits here and have
Yeah.
to reset at a different level.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we have to understand and remember that we're souls inside of these bodies
Yeah.
that have cameras and microphones and sensors. And
Yeah.
our eyes can only see 0.004% of what's
Hmm.
the electromagnetic
I never
energy.
thought of it quite that way, but that is a great way to put it.
Yeah, there's so
Yeah.
much going on around us,
Hmm.
that, but we
Yeah.
go like, nope,
And
I
we're
didn't see it, I don't
filtering
believe
out.
it.
Yeah. We're
Yes, yes.
filtering. Yeah. But when you're talking about the robotic part of sensors and
Yeah,
all of that, it is very limited.
yeah.
To is what those mechanical eyes are looking at is all we
Yes.
see.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that
Right.
camera, what it's pointed at is all it'll get.
Yeah. And to
Yeah.
take it one step further, think about your thoughts,
Hmm.
anyone who's tried to quiet our minds,
Right.
and
Right.
in meditation, like, oh, I got to write a check, or, oh, this,
Hmm.
garbage got, where did that thought come from?
Right.
And
Right.
then the second question is, well, then who's observing that thought? Like,
Right.
who's in your mind is observing the thoughts that are in your mind?
Right.
Then
And
you
that was
take a
like the
step back.
power of now, where he said, well, wait a
Yes.
minute, who's saying that?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
That is kind of scary when you start to think. It's almost like there's a parasite in there that you've just recognized, but it's not
Yeah.
physical.
It's
You know,
it's yeah, it's another you. It's another
it's another entity. I'm not even
yeah.
sure, I feel as if it is you. It's almost separate,
Yeah.
you know.
I just heard the term today as I watch Gaia, the
Hmm.
show or the
The
website, and
TV,
then
Gaia TV.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and then the website has all these videos. But
Hmm.
this one woman was talking about maybe we're our own what's that word?
AI.
Yeah, avatars. Maybe
Hmm.
we're, and then she had a shot of this, the new videos things where you
Oh,
put over your
yeah.
eyes,
The virtual reality
the virtual
things.
reality, and then you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
go and see all these things. Well, maybe like we exist at another level, looking through, creating an avatar called Barb and Scott,
Right.
and that's our higher self, kind of creating this as our own little world.
There's a good possibility of it. And then sometimes especially with AI coming out,
Oh
it's
yeah.
crossed my mind, were we somebody else's AI? And
Yes. Yeah.
bacteria took us over and they abandoned
Mm,
it because seem to be getting dumber, for one
yeah.
thing, like we've lost the source. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have more, I've heard that we have more bacteria cells than human cells.
Hmm.
So,
Interesting.
were we some, ET's,
Hmm.
AI that
Hmm.
that just kind of got caught in the weeds and the bacteria took over and they abandoned and now we think we're human. We
Yeah.
have lost the memory of
Wow.
being created by other.
Boy, that's a real
I
mind
know.
bender.
Oh yeah, believe me. It's one of these that comes to you as you're washing the dishes and you think, "Oh my God."
Where did that come from?
Right, right. Where did that
Yeah.
come from? And how true
Wow.
is it? We have no
Yeah.
idea. But
Hmm.
as we look at AI and the future of it,
Yeah.
can we control it? Well, maybe
It's
they thought the same.
going to be, I think it's going to be the most impactful technological advancement
Right.
in hundreds of years.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
frightening, but I
yeah.
have to remind myself so was TV.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
TV came out, people were afraid. When people were afraid to get on trains and to go at 40 miles an hour, they thought they'd be crushed, their
Yeah.
bones would be crushed. So,
I
I have to calm myself down.
I love the quote from George Bernard Shaw. Every great truth starts out as blasphemy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You
so
know,
true. And
it's like,
fear, and
and
the fear. Yeah.
yes, yes. and
Hmm.
I relate a lot to Copernicus, when he spent his whole life thinking that, the universe, the way the solar system was described was wrong, that
Yeah.
the Earth was the center. He wrote a
Yeah.
book. The same year he died, he published a book about his things. And then 70 years later, Galileo started
Hmm.
seeing and providing proof, and then he got castigated, and
Right.
so it takes a
Right.
long time for these major paradigm shifts to occur. And
Right.
that's what I think is happening now. As you probably know, people are being woken up, they're getting
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah.
the world is changing, and it's going to be
Mhm.
positive. I'm like, well, I don't really see that right now,
I
especially if you
know.
turn the news on,
I know.
but
In a way, I'm glad I'm old.
yes, right. I'm going to see it
Yeah.
as a mess,
But we
but
kind of went through the spiritualism too at the turn of the turn of
mhm,
the last century, the 19
yes.
from 1880 to 19 really up the depression killed it, I think.
Mhm.
And the depression really should have vaulted it on to the next level, but it killed it.
Yeah, I think that was more maybe religious spirituality, and then this is
Mhm.
more pure
Well,
spirituality.
then it
I
was
don't know.
spiritualism that, the spiritualist movement.
Oh, yes, right. I see
Yeah,
what you're saying.
that's what
Yeah.
I was looking at more.
Yeah.
And then they
Didn't
went
really.
back into religion.
Yeah.
That's the way I,
You can't
and
make them.
but that the depression really kind of killed it and sent everybody back into religion,
Hmm.
rather than,
Yes.
and then it
Right.
went underground and in the 60s started to come back up again.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are,
Hmm.
wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
I know.
Wow.
Pretty
Wow.
interesting. Well, I guess we've got to get on with our day, right? But thanks so
Yes.
much for a really interesting conversation. It's been
Well, thanks,
fascinating.
Bob. You're a
Thank
wonderful
you.
host. Great
No, thanks.
questions. I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate hearing that. Thank you. And your book is fascinating. Everybody should pick up a copy and really go through it. And it is a step by step of find your guides, find your
Yes,
healing team. Yeah.
absolutely. It's really
Yeah.
good with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being on.
All right. Thank
And
you. Have a
enjoy
great day.
Jersey. I'll see
Yes, have a good
Jersey in
trip
about a
out.
week. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.